There was a time when many people thought that Nature Boy Ric Flair would never retire from professional wrestling, even when fans would say the Nature Boy's best days were behind him, and even when Flair began to show his age both from an in-ring and presentation standpoint. It felt like Slick Rick was never going to stop styling and profiling, and a lot of us were quite content with that, as selfish as that may be. Rick may not have been the competitor he once was in 2008 in comparison to the Ric Flair of 1988, but he was still a very entertaining performer who old school fans still enjoyed seeing. It didn't matter if age was catching up to Rick or if the Nature Boy didn't move the same way he once did, we were just happy to see Flair. With all that being said, it was Vince McMahon who made Flair take a long, good look at his next big opponent, Father Time. And while many of us would have been happy enough to watch Flair keep going in the WWE, it was never going to last forever. Vince wanted Flair to stop wrestling in 2008 and the choice was taken away from Flair. The Nature Boy's 36-year career that includes over 4,700 recorded matches and over 40 title reigns spanning over the NWA, WCW and WWE was to come to an end, and Rick wasn't prepared to let go. Everything about Ric Flair was the Nature Boy, and for Rick to let go of it all and move on to something else, well, it was extremely difficult.
I'm embarrassed, I'm sorry. I don't want to go.
In 2007, Ric Flair was getting prepared for a future on the SmackDown show, although the amount of time Flair spent on the blue brand was minimal. After failing to capture the US Championship from MVP, Flair teamed up with his old Evolution teammate Batista to feud against the Great Khali. On the 3rd of August episode of SmackDown, less than 2 months since getting drafted, Flair was written off TV after Rick was injured in storyline. In reality, Vince McMahon had decided that Rick was going to start building towards his retirement match, scheduled to take place at WrestleMania 24. Triple H said, "I think it was getting to a point where people were starting to worry about him in the ring. No matter how much we told him, Rick, you don't need to do that stuff, he would do it on his own." I'm not sure if he was fully, in his mind, ready to retire. Vince broached the subject with him. Vince said there's a reason why they put a jockey on a racehorse. Somebody's got to pull the reins or they will run until they die. It's his job to pull the reins. Flair said it all happened after one phone call from Vince McMahon. During the call, according to Flair, McMahon said he knows Rick wants to keep doing this until he's 89, but it's time to bow gracefully and end the run. When you look at what Triple H said here and how Vince felt about Rick, there really wasn't any options for Flair. He was being told that the company weren't prepared to let him continue working full-time inside a WWE ring. Even if Flair refused, he still wasn't going to get booked on the cards, and so Rick had to accept it. The plan was to put Flair into the WWE Hall of Fame the night before WrestleMania 24, and then Flair would have his final match at the big pay-per-view. The way the WWE would go about this was quite interesting. A storyline developed out of Flair's unwillingness to retire, another case of reality getting mixed into the fictional world of professional wrestling. When Flair came back from his injury that he suffered at the hands of the Great Khali, he showed up on Raw and not SmackDown. On the November 26, 2000 episode of Monday Night Raw, held in Charlotte, North Carolina, Flair wanted some TV time so he could make an announcement in the middle of the ring. Many felt that Flair was going to announce his retirement, and Rick played it so well here by getting emotional as the fans cheered his name, but Rick turned it all around when he announced that he isn't going anywhere.
That I will never retire!
Flair follows this up by saying he'll retire when he dies in the ring, and again, going back to what Triple H said earlier, it kinda makes you think that maybe Rick wasn't lying here. The man absolutely loved professional wrestling and it's all he's ever known. Vince McMahon then comes out and McMahon says he's happy Rick isn't retiring and Vince hopes the Nature Boy will keep wrestling forever, as long as Ric Flair keeps winning matches. McMahon looks at Flair and he repeats himself, as long as Ric Flair wins, the Nature Boy can stay around. If Ric Flair loses a match, any match at all, then the career of Ric Flair comes to an end. It doesn't matter if it's via pinfall, submission, countout, disqualification. If Flair loses a match, that's it, it's all over. Keep in mind though that an additional stipulation was added where Flair's career would only be on the line in one-on-one singles matches. WWE Champion Randy Orton comes out to thank Flair for all he's done for the Legend Killer, and Orton thanks Flair in advance for giving him the opportunity of ending his career tonight on Raw. Vince makes it official, Randy Orton versus Ric Flair in the main event of Raw, and Orton ends the promo by saying, "Thank you." In the match, Chris Jericho caused a distraction, allowing Flair to hit a low blow and score a pinfall win, but it was a close matchup and the tone was definitely set here. It sounds so cliche, but this really was art imitating life. Flair was now going to hang on to his career week in and week out, desperately doing everything he can to keep hold of a career that he simply couldn't let go of. All in all, Flair would have around 20 matches where his career was on the line, many of these happening at house shows. But let's take a look at the more notable matches in the run-up to WrestleMania 24. The next time Flair had to step into the ring to defend his career after the Orton match was on the December 31st, 2007 episode of Raw, and this time Flair would go up against Triple H. To ensure Triple H wouldn't lay down for his old Evolution teammate, Hunter's spot in the Royal Rumble was also put on the line. If Hunter lost, he wouldn't take part in the 2008 Royal Rumble match. Triple H wanted to know if Flair would still be his friend after Hunter ends his career, and Rick was offended that Triple H thought the outcome of the match had a foregone conclusion in the mind of Triple H. Flair says he'll always be Hunter's friend, but Triple H better bring the game to the ring. To be the man, you got to beat the man. The incredibly entertaining and underrated match came to an end when Raw GM William Regal hit Flair with a pair of brass knucks, meaning that Triple H got disqualified and Flair won. Hunter and Flair hugged after the match, and in the end, Triple H still ended up taking part in the Royal Rumble match. 2 weeks later, Flair managed to defeat William Regal. The 2008 Royal Rumble was held in Madison Square Garden, and Ric Flair opened up the show with a match against SmackDown's MVP. Flair cut a promo before the match where he said it's been an honour being able to work inside MSG. Ric talks about having his first match in the Garden in 1976, and Flair thanks the New York fans for the respect they have shown him in the years that followed. But then the promo gets interrupted by MVP and the match gets underway. Rick wins with a figure 4 leg lock, but you can tell that this was an emotional night for Flair, something we're going to see more of as this video progresses. The match turned out to be Flair's final match inside the Garden, and Rick knew it too. Flair gets a little upset as he waves goodbye to the fans, and the Royal Rumble pay-per-view continues on. On the following episode of SmackDown, Flair and MVP had a rematch, and MVP ended up getting himself disqualified when he wouldn't let go of a figure 4 reversal. After the bout, MVP continued attacking Flair's leg, leaving the Nature Boy injured and needing medical attention backstage. On the following episode of Raw, Mr. Kennedy made fun of Flair, and Rick was challenged to a match at No Way Out. All Flair had to do was show up next week and accept the match invitation. Flair shows up on the February 11th episode of Raw. He gives Kennedy a history lesson while explaining that Kennedy may think he's at the top of his game, but he's nowhere near it yet. Flair accepts the match at No Way Out, and Kennedy attacks the Nature Boy afterwards, targeting the injured leg. So, at No Way Out, Ric Flair gets a great ovation in Las Vegas, and even Floyd Mayweather gives it up for the dirtiest player in the game. Kennedy went after Flair's leg throughout the whole match, but it wasn't enough. Rick locks in the figure 4, and the legacy of the Nature Boy continues on. Flair grabbed the microphone afterwards and he reminded fans that he's never going to retire, but in reality, the finish line was now in sight. The next night on Raw, Shawn Michaels came out to announce that Nature Boy Ric Flair was getting inducted into the 2008 Hall of Fame, and this was maybe a hint that WrestleMania would feature Ric's last match. Before we skip ahead to the following Raw, Ric Flair showed up on WWE ECW to team up with CM Punk. Punk and Flair defeated Elijah Burke and Shelton Benjamin. Then, the following week on Raw, after taking care of Lance Cade and Trevor Murdoch, Ric Flair came out to surprise the Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels. Flair said he was honoured to get inducted into the Hall of Fame as an active wrestler, but there's one thing that could make WrestleMania weekend even more magical for Ric. Flair wants to go one-on-one with the man whose name is synonymous with WrestleMania, Shawn Michaels. Shawn reminds Ric about the career stipulation, and HBK says he won't wrestle Flair. Shawn doesn't want to be known as the guy who ends the Nature Boy's career. Flair thinks Shawn is a little too confident here. It isn't a given that HBK will beat Flair at WrestleMania. And when Shawn says that he didn't mean it that way, Flair replies by saying all that respect that Shawn showed him last week during the Hall of Fame announcement means nothing if Shawn won't face Flair at Mania. Flair wants an opportunity to have the greatest match of his career against Shawn Michaels, and this was enough for Shawn to say yes, and so it was official. Flair vs Michaels was going to take place at WrestleMania 24 in Orlando. Things seemed to be fine between Michaels and Flair the next week on Raw. The two were able to team up to defeat Lance Cade and Trevor Murdoch, but after the match, Shawn said he has something he needs to get off his chest. He's changed his mind and now he doesn't want to have the match at WrestleMania. Shawn reminds Ric that HBK is known as the showstopper, and Flair should just forget about the match and move on, because if the Nature Boy keeps pushing for this WrestleMania encounter, it'll be Flair's show that gets stopped. HBK gets booed as he walks back up the ramp, and Flair is left confused in the ring. The next week, Ric Flair kicked off the show and he called out Shawn Michaels. Flair tells Michaels that back in the day, the word sympathy didn't exist in pro wrestling. In Flair's world, the words sympathy and pity still don't exist. But last week, he felt that Shawn Michaels was showing him sympathy by calling off the match. Ric says he doesn't want sympathy nor pity, he wants respect. If he's going to remain a WWE superstar, then he needs to beat the best, and the best right now is Shawn Michaels. Flair tells Shawn that the match needs to happen, and Shawn gets a smile on his face when Flair says if the Nature Boy wins at WrestleMania, it's because Ric Flair is the man. If Shawn wins, it means HBK has beat the man. Flair believes he can catch Shawn out and win the match, so right now Flair wants Shawn's commitment. Shawn says he loves Ric Flair, he didn't mean to show him pity last week, but Shawn Michaels reminds Flair that HBK is Mr. WrestleMania. Shawn says at WrestleMania, Flair isn't the man, he is, and at Mania, Shawn can't control himself, it just happens. Shawn outperforms everyone. The match is again made official, the two men shake hands and HBK vs Flair is back on for WrestleMania. Shawn heard that Ric's got himself a handicap match this week on SmackDown, so Michaels decides to help out his WrestleMania opponent. Flair and Michaels vs Edge, Ryder and Hawkins takes place on the March 14th, 2008 episode of SmackDown, and even after interference from The Undertaker, Edge was still able to win the match for his team. The next episode of Raw, the 17th of March 2008 episode, was a big night in terms of the storyline going into WrestleMania. Shawn doesn't have a match, but he's hanging out in Ric Flair's locker room. Flair's annoyed that Shawn has showed up, and Flair says he doesn't want to see Shawn again until WrestleMania. The Nature Boy vs Vince McMahon takes place on this same episode, a street fight where Vince wants to end Flair's career before WrestleMania takes place. It's a physical encounter here. Vince has Flair beat after a chair shot, but Shawn interferes by pulling the referee out during Vince's pin attempt. The match continues, and Flair manages to hit a low blow before jumping off the top rope, through Vince McMahon and through a table. This gets a great reaction from the audience, by the way. The problem here, though, in Ric Flair's mind, is that Shawn needed to help Flair in order for Ric to survive. And the next week on Raw, Flair said he's lost all respect for Michaels because of HBK's actions. Michaels comes out and he says the Ric Flair he knew was the dirtiest player in the game. He always had backup, and all Shawn was doing was providing Flair with that same backup. HBK done what he thought Flair would do in the same situation. Flair gets annoyed when Shawn begins running through the Nature Boy's catchphrases. Flair doesn't need anyone to tell him who he is, and Flair then produces the NWA Championship. Ric runs down the NWA champions that he's defeated, and Flair says if Shawn was 20 years older, HBK would be on the list of champions that Flair faced for the gold. Flair says he needs Shawn to bring out the best in him at WrestleMania. He needs one more night where he can be the man. and Shawn assures Flair that he'll get everything he needs. He's gonna get the showstopper, the icon, the main event, and Flair says he expects nothing less. Before the segment ends though, Shawn delivers one of the best lines during this whole rivalry. Shawn says, "I want to remind you of a little story. Remember the story of Old Yeller? They loved that dog. But when it was time, they had to take that dog out back and finish him. Come Sunday, the showstopper's gonna take you, Old Yeller, behind the woodshed and put you out of your misery." This line makes Flair completely flip. The Nature Boy slaps Shawn twice while demanding that Shawn does it now. Flair tells HBK to take him behind the woodshed and finish him, but Shawn says, this Sunday, Flair gets put out of his misery. Later on, Flair and Shawn were involved in an 8-man tag, a WrestleMania showcase match, and the two ended up fighting. Flair nailed Shawn with a low blow, and the Nature Boy ends up winning the match for his team. During WrestleMania weekend, Ric Flair was an emotional wreck. The WWE documented this weekend through their WWE 24 series on the network, and you can't help but feel sorry for Slick Rick, something that Rick didn't want people to feel. He broke down during a Hall of Fame press conference, and he broke down again soon after when he bumped into his old rival Dusty Rhodes. Flair's daughter Charlotte said that Rick was like this the whole weekend. The reality of his career ending seemingly hit Flair during WrestleMania weekend, whereas he was more accepting in the weeks leading up to the show, or at least he appeared to be. Triple H inducted Rick into the Hall of Fame, and the Nature Boy was seen struggling again to keep it together while Triple H talked about how much Flair meant to the wrestling business. With Shawn Michaels watching from the audience and Rick's family also in attendance, Rick came out and he gave a great speech, reflecting on his legendary career with the proverbial tear in his eye. Again though, Flair reminded fans that WrestleMania wasn't the end for the Nature Boy.
I'm not going to retire. I'll never retire.
Go out of your way though to watch this speech, it's very, very good. Flair reminds Shawn towards the end that in regards to their match at WrestleMania, to be the man, you gotta beat the man. The WWE 24 documentary shows footage afterwards of superstars thanking Flair, and Jim Ross promises to do his absolute best during the match commentary at WrestleMania. Jim says he'll help make the match immortal. Recently, Ric Flair revealed that Shawn Michaels told him to completely let go during their match, take the pressure off himself, and let Shawn do the work. Flair was, as we've established, an emotional wreck all weekend, and Flair said that Shawn wanted to take the burden of the match away from Rick. Rick said, "I was what we call a ring general. I knew where I was and I never knew but less than by a foot where I was in a ring. I knew what to do to get the crowd going. I knew what to do to make them mad. I knew what to do to make them laugh. And that whole night I just went in saying, you can get through this, just listen to Shawn, just listen to Shawn. And we got through it." Shawn Michaels said, "For me, it was mostly trying to stay focused while dealing with so many of the external emotions going on. Given all the amazing things he had done in his career, it needed to be extra special. I don't know if I took it too seriously, but I took it pretty darn serious." What ended up happening at WrestleMania, I felt, was a fitting end to the career of Ric Flair. And yes, Flair did wrestle matches after this in TNA, and we'll come back to that in a moment, but HBK and Ric Flair ended up having a good match at WrestleMania 24 that could very well include the most emotional match ending in WrestleMania history. Flair's family was at ringside as the Nature Boy walked down the ramp. Flair had an extra extravagant robe made especially for Mania, and the sky filled up with golden fireworks as Flair walked down to the ring with his head held high. The whole entrance was phenomenal. Once the match began, you wouldn't know that Flair was in a bad way mentally. There were moments thrown into the match where Shawn looked like he was in danger. There were moments where the clock turned back and we got the old Nature Boy back. But it's the finish that sticks with people after they watch the match. Michaels has a chance to perform sweet chin music, but he stops dead in his tracks, resulting in Flair taking advantage and performing a figure four. Shawn doesn't make the same mistake again, and as the match progresses, Flair takes 2 super kicks. After the second, Shawn realizes that it's all over. Flair slowly gets to his feet and he's begging Shawn to come at him, but Flair's done, it's over. The finish comes when Shawn says, "I'm sorry, I love you," and Ric Flair takes the third super kick, ending the match and ending the WWE career of Nature Boy Ric Flair. Once the bell rings, you can see the pressure of the match and the whole weekend leaving Flair as he completely breaks down again. Shawn leaves the ring so Ric can have this moment all to himself, and Flair takes some time to say goodbye before embracing his family at ringside. Flair then walks back up the long ramp and he turns around one more time to say goodbye. It was later revealed that the whole "I'm sorry, I love you" thing wasn't written into the match script. Neither man knew it was going to happen, it just did. And those few moments before the final superkick would become a true bona fide WrestleMania moment. The WWE paid tribute to Ric Flair the next night on Raw, and this is great to watch back. Ric didn't know this was going to happen, and we get to see superstars past and present come out and give thanks to Nature Boy Ric Flair. Some are guys who Flair worked with, others were friends. Even The Undertaker paid homage to Flair, as did Vince McMahon himself. It's a great Monday Night Raw segment, and it ranks up there as one of my all-time favourite moments of the show. When Shawn got in the ring, he hugged Flair before asking, "Have I honoured you, my hero?" In the end, the whole roster comes out and Raw fades to black with wrestlers and fans celebrating the career of Nature Boy Ric Flair. It almost feels bad talking about the TNA stuff at this point, but I know people will bring it up in the comments, so yeah, Flair found it impossible to let go after all, and he decided to work matches in TNA. Before competing in TNA though, Flair took part in Hulk Hogan's tour of Australia, where Flair wrestled the Hulkster 4 times in the space of a week. Flair lost every match. Flair then went to TNA, his first match for the company happened in March of 2010, and again he lost. As a matter of fact, Flair would lose 9 matches in TNA while only winning 3. But it is what it is really. Ric didn't want to stop wrestling, so he continued. Plus, he needed the money. Flair and Shawn talked about the Nature Boy's time in TNA on Flair's old podcast, and Flair said he regrets working for TNA and not stopping after the WrestleMania match, but quite simply, he was getting paid decent money for doing very little, so Flair took it. Ric was paying out a lot of money at the time to his ex-wives and also a lot of lawyers, so Flair called his time in TNA an absolute disaster, but he got paid. To be fair to Ric though, there were some good Nature Boy moments in TNA. But that's going to do it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed this one because I had a great time going back and re-watching all of this. If you have the network, check out the WWE 24 special on Flair's farewell. It does a great job of telling the story along with interviews from Flair, Hunter, Shawn and everyone else involved in the storyline. Thanks very much for watching this video and take care.